reserving the right to object. Approximately 24 hours after the attack at Abbey Gate in Kabul, I had the privilege to speak with the father of one of the Marines who lost his life there. The young Marine from the state of Missouri, St. Charles County, was named Jared Schmitz. His father, his name is Mark, told me of the devastation of losing his son. He later spoke in public about his son in this way. He said, "I'm very honored," this is Mark talking about his boy Jared, "I'm very honored that I could call him my son. His life meant so much more. I'm so incredibly devastated that I won't be able to see the man that he was very quickly growing into becoming." 13 service members lost their life on that day, hundreds of civilians, and as a result of the botched evacuation operation, hundreds, if not thousands, of American civilians were left behind to the enemy, where hundreds still remain. Now, I'm not going to reveal the contents of my conversation with Mr. Schmitz, except to say something that he asked me, something that he told me. He told me, "Go fight like hell." And that's exactly what I'm going to do until there is accountability for the worst foreign policy crisis this country has suffered since the Vietnam War. Now we hear from our friends on the other side of the aisle that our insistence that we actually vote on nominees is unprecedented. I would humbly suggest that the crisis into which this president has led this country is unprecedented. In my lifetime, it is unprecedented. It is unprecedented for an American president to watch 13 service members lose their lives in an evacuation for which he is responsible, and then to celebrate that operation as an unqualified success, an extraordinary success, I believe was President Biden's words. Really, an extraordinary success. 13 service members dead, hundreds of civilians dead, hundreds of Americans left behind to the enemy. That's success? No, that's failure. That's unacceptable. And who's been held accountable for this disaster? No one. Who has the president fired? Who has offered their resignation? Which of the planners at the Department of State or the Department of Defense or the National Security Council has been relieved of duty? No one. Now, we've seen this movie before. Back to Vietnam. In Vietnam, we watched as the experts in Washington sent thousands and thousands of Americans to die, concealing the true state of the war, lying to the American people. And what happened to the people who planned that disastrous war over all those years? Nothing. They went on to their board seats. They went on to collect their fat pension checks. They went on to be celebrated. And who was left to pick up the pieces? It was the families of the fallen. It was those who lost their lives. Well, Mr. President, I, for one, am not willing to stand by and participate in that kind of theater again. I am not going to go back to the families of the fallen in my state and say that I didn't do anything while people in this body looked the other way. It's time that there was accountability. And so is this a protest that I am lodging by asking the Senate to actually vote on these nominees? You bet it is. You bet it is. Because we don't need more leadership of the same kind in the State Department. We don't need more leadership of the same kind in the Department of Defense. We need different kind of leadership. We need a different direction for this country. And until there is accountability, I'm going to ask that the Senate do the simple task of its job, which is to actually vote on these nominees. The least we could do is observe regular order and vote on these leadership positions at the Department of State and the Department of Defense. Now, my colleague from Maryland says, and I think he's right, he says that we've got to put national security first, and I agree with him about that. And that begins at the top with the President of the United States and the leadership of the Department of Defense and the Department of State. But I, for one, am not going to stand by and look the other way while this administration systematically endangers our national security, imperils the American people, and watches the sacrifice of our soldiers go by without any accountability, without any change in direction. And I'm not willing to look the other way and just pretend it didn't happen, which seems to be the posture that many in this body have adopted. I'm not willing to do that. Frankly, I can't do that because I promised the parents of the fallen that I wouldn't do that. And so I'm going to discharge my responsibility. And as long as it takes, I will continue to draw attention to what happened at Abbey Gate and to demand accountability for it. If I'm still here on the floor doing this in 2023, so be it. 2024, so be it. Until somebody is held accountable. And I don't care who the president is. I don't care what administration it is. I want to see accountability for what has happened in Afghanistan, what happened to those service members, and what happened to those hundreds of civilians who are even now left behind enemy lines to the enemy. I would just note one other thing about the situation we're in vis-a-vis these nominees. While I can ask that there be a vote on the floor of the Senate, I certainly can't prevent that vote. So you might ask yourself, why in the world, if these nominations are so important, and by the way, I agree that these are leadership positions. That's in fact why I'm asking for a vote. These are leadership positions of the Department of State in this case, the Department of Defense in other cases. But why in the world haven't we voted? I can't prevent a vote. None of my colleagues can prevent a vote. And the answer is, ask Senator Schumer. My friends control the floor. Senator Schumer is the majority leader of the United States Senate. And what has he had the Senate been doing? Well, not much. Yesterday, last week rather, over a 3-day period, 3 days, how many votes did the United States Senate take? 1. For 2 full days, we were in session. How many votes did the United States Senate take on any subject? 0. If these were such pressing priorities, why isn't the Senate Majority Leader putting them on the floor for a vote? I have no earthly idea, other than apparently he just can't get his act together to do it. Here we are. It's 2:15 in the afternoon on a Thursday. Are we voting? Nope. How many votes have we taken today? 1. Will we be voting tomorrow? I doubt it. Will we be voting next week? Who knows? Apparently, it's not that much of a priority. So Senator Schumer has a lot to answer for in many regards, not least his defense of the indefensible Afghanistan debacle and the loss of life there. But he also should take a look in the mirror, and I humbly suggest that my colleagues across the aisle might want to question him as to why these nominations that they insist are so important aren't being put on the floor to be voted on. I'd be happy to vote on them anytime, but I am not going to consent to waving them through and waiving regular order until there is some accountability for the disaster that this administration has pushed upon this country and upon the people of my state. Now, I have one other, before I object, and I am going to object, Mr. President, but before I do, I want to pick up one piece of bookkeeping issue with my colleague, the senator from Maryland. Let me just say, actually, while I'm on that subject, the senator from Maryland is across the aisle. I want to be clear about this with my colleague, the senator from Maryland, whom I've worked with many times before. I don't doubt for a moment his sincerity or his earnestness on this issue. And I know that he thinks that these nominations are pressing and that they are important, and I agree with him. And I'm sure that he is frustrated by the fact that we disagree on the right way to get accountability in Afghanistan. I acknowledge that. It's an honest disagreement. And so I don't want my remarks in any way to suggest in any fashion that I question the integrity or the uprightness or the sincerity of my colleague from Maryland. And I just wanted to say to him that 2 of the nominations that he read out, I don't have any objection to, Adam Schneidman and Jack Merkel. So if the senator were willing to reoffer those separately, I think you certainly would encounter no objection from me. But with all of that, Mr. President, I object.